right, thanks so much for sharing your garden with us. And now we're going to be turning our attention to Red Dirt Ramblings. I'm joined by Dee Nash from Oklahoma, and that's the name of her blog site, which is a garden website that has a lot of fans all across the United States. And she is here to talk about the 2030-something Garden Guide, which is her new publication. Welcome to Central Texas Gardener.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
Well, it's great to have you, and welcome to Texas. It's great to have you in the Lone Star State. Now, tell me about the book. What's new or different about the book?
I wrote the book for the millennial generation, those in their 20s and 30s, because I have 3 kids in that age group.
Okay. So what's different about that generation?
That generation is highly visual, and they're really, really busy. They don't have a lot of time, and so I wanted to pass on gardening to them, and I thought the best way to do that was to create a book that really speaks to them.
Okay, well, I think the millennials should be all about gardening. The ones that I've developed relationships with really are attuned to, living life with integrity, and gardening has a lot to do with that.
Definitely so. They're extremely worried about the food supply, and I think that's what backed them into gardening, and I think they care deeply about the environment.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about your trip into gardening. How did you get to be a well-known garden blogger, traveling around the country, writing books, etc.?
I started out writing for Oklahoma Gardener magazine. I started out in newspapers first, and then I moved on to Oklahoma Gardener. And then I decided to start a gardening blog because I wanted to speak about things that touched my heart instead of just things that editors wanted to do. Because sometimes those are 2 different things.
Yeah.
And then the blog did real well, and I think partly because I just started it in 2007.
Okay.
And then I just kept on and did more and more and wanted to write a gardening book.
Well, tell me about your own garden. What lights your passion as a gardener?
Oh, I grow a little bit of everything. I don't think there's a plant I've met that I didn't like.
Okay.
Truly. But I grow.
You're one of those.
I'm one of those. I'm a plant freak. I grow vegetables and herbs and fruit.
Okay.
And I also grow a bunch of ornamentals. I have about 100 roses.
Roses are fun.
Roses
they can be addictive, obviously.
Yeah, they can.
You think? So tell me about gardening in Oklahoma. I would imagine that'd be a challenge, like here in Central Texas.
It is a huge challenge because, like Texas, it's partly the plains and partly the deciduous forest, and it's a very diverse climate. We have a very diverse climate in Oklahoma, and so we have bad soil too. So I hear you got a bit of bad soil.
You think? You get a little colder in the wintertime too. So
We do.
So you have that to deal with as well. We're a little fortunate there. Things, our winters tend to be pretty mild. Now let's turn our attention back to the book. Now, what can new gardeners really learn from the book? How are you trying to hook them into gardening?
I'm trying to start I want them to start small. So I started with containers because anybody can grow something in a container.
Right.
Especially if they use drip irrigation. And I show them how to set up drip irrigation, and we go through 3 years of learning about containers, and then I move into raised beds. And then after raised beds, I have a sensory garden, because I assume by this time you've learned a lot about gardening, you're hooked, I've got you in there, and so there you go.
Well, I love the starting with container gardening. It's actually how I started gardening as an adult.
Me
was
too.
with containers. A lot of young people live in apartments. They don't have space for a garden per se, but you really can create something really wonderful in a garden. I was looking at the illustrations in the book, and there's a lovely illustration of like a greens garden or a lettuce garden, all in one bowl.
Oh, the salad bowl garden.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a whole salad bowl project. I just started with a round bowl, a nice large container, and then I just did seeds around the edges, and I did 2 different kinds of seeds. And it made a really pretty little bowl.
Yeah.
Put some drip irrigation on it and had lettuce in just a few weeks.
Well, lettuce is a beautiful crop and an easy success for somebody who actually wants to have edibles.
Yes, and it's like usually the second best thing. Most people want to grow tomatoes, and tomatoes are a little tougher. So start with lettuce first, because that's easier. It's a much easier crop, very fast. You get your satisfaction quickly.
All right, so you have something there for the very beginners, and as you said, you try to scale it up a little bit. One of the things I noted about the book is that there are lots of great design ideas, and that's, I think, one of the things that a lot of people find most challenging about gardens. They may learn about how to take care of plants, and they may be very good at that, but putting it all together with a sense of design is a challenge.
I think it is a challenge unless you sit down and really think about it. But a good design is what will take your garden from being just a bunch of plants on your deck to actually being a garden that you can sit out and enjoy. Because if you're going to grow stuff in containers on your patio, then you want to be able to sit out there and have a drink
Yeah, right.
in the evenings.
And use the space for social occasions
Yeah.
and, accommodate your children or your pets and all those other kinds of things. It's really a question of design, right?
Yes, it's absolutely a question of design.
Yeah, and then you have some really cool, again, step-by-step procedures and ideas about design implementation that I really like. Now let's talk about the raised bed piece, because to me that it makes perfect sense as you scale up from a container garden, because it's kind of like a big container on the ground.
Exactly. I think of raised beds as just being containers. It's just they're a little bit larger, so you can grow more things in them. But still, you're doing the exact same elements. You can choose your own soil. You can choose your own watering conditions. All of those things you can place where you want them. And I think raised beds are the next step up.
Yeah, and then when you live in an area that is maybe soil challenged.
Oh, like Oklahoma and Texas? Yes, raised beds. In fact, most of my garden is in raised beds because even though I don't have a lot of clay soil where I live, because I live east of I-35, I still don't have very good soil. It doesn't have high fertility.
Right.
And it leaches out nutrients really fast.
So
raised beds are the way to go.
raised beds, you just keep adding the compost, basically.
Yeah, I think that is the biggest lesson in gardening at all, is to just add compost, add compost,
Okay.
add compost.
There are other practical how-to things in the book, like creating a garden path. Now,
Oh, yes.
and this could be a struggle for a lot of people, especially if they have a nemesis in the garden called Bermuda grass.
Yeah,
Right.
Bermuda grass. My entire state is covered in Bermuda. It was brought in for cattle
I think the
foraging.
entire part of the nation is covered in Bermuda.
Bermuda is evil. It's sort of a kudzu of its own.
Yeah.
But we dug all that Bermuda out. Some people have asked me, did I use Roundup? I didn't use Roundup when we put in all of our paths. I literally got in there with a digging fork, and I think a digging fork works better than a shovel because you don't bring up the soil with it. You just bring up the roots. You get underneath them and lift them. And so I dug out all of that walkway.
But you're in sandy soil, right?
Right. So if you're in clay, it's a little bit more challenging.
Yeah.
You're right.
Right. So digging it out. So, okay, you dig out the Bermuda, but then you don't want, say there's a little bit of root left, or somewhere in the neighborhood there's still a sense of Bermuda.
Right.
It's going to come back. So how do you prevent that in that situation?
Well, I don't know that you can prevent it. Just the truth is, I have to whack it back every year. I
Okay.
don't. You can spray, but I don't.
Okay.
So I have to whack it back every
No, I
year.
was thinking maybe perhaps there was a technique for layering materials into the pathways.
You can layer materials in the pathway, or you can use landscape fabric. They say that helps, but the truth is, Bermuda can't even get through landscape fabric. But Bermuda's weaker in the winter, so we can get it out easier.
Okay, attack it while it's weak.
Attack it while
Oh,
it's
it's
weak,
good.
and then spray it with the vinegar in the summer.
Okay.
You're just gonna have to keep beating it back. I'm sorry. I wish I had a better answer.
That's all right. That's all right. We've been battling Bermuda for years, and nobody's come up with a silver bullet. Real briefly, I understand that when you started this whole adventure, you had a fear of bugs.
I did have a fear of bugs. I was terrified of bugs for years, and so when I started gardening, I decided I was going to have to live with bugs because most gardeners, when they very first start, are kind of scared. And I thought, I'm going to learn all about those bugs so that I know them well, and then I don't have to be scared of them anymore. And wasps, for example, if you're not around a wasp nest, you're not going to get stung.
Right.
They're busy.
Yeah,
so they don't want
doing
anything to
their
do
own
with
thing.
you.
Right. My neighbors think I'm crazy because I leave the wasp nest on my front porch. And they get highly anxious about it and are jumping out of their seat every time one moves. But I was like, it's okay. Just don't attack them.
A lot of wasps don't even sting. There's a whole group of wasps
Sure.
that don't sting at all. So.
Right. Well, it's been fun visiting with you, Dee.
Thank you.
And for folks who want to hear your thoughts and your ramblings, Red Dirt Ramblings
Red
is
Dirt
the
Ramblings.
website. The book, the 20 to 30-something garden guide, is available out there for all those folks with millennials on their list. So it's a great start for a lot of young gardeners. Thank you again for being our guest.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, and coming up next is our friend Daphne.